welcome to the Times of India. You're watching Global Pulse with me, Neha Khanna. Tonight, we have an exclusive interview for you. Here on Global Pulse, we spoke to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. The former premier shared his candid views with us on the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions during this war, the growing anger around the world towards Israel, the sentiment of people at home, and the way ahead for Gaza, Israel, and the Middle East. Olmert had some very strong words for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his conduct of the war. Remember, heart-wrenching scenes of starvation continue to pour out of Gaza. 2 million Gazans are starving. Scores of people, including children, have died from hunger and malnutrition. People have collapsed in the streets from exhaustion. In one instance after another, thousands of hungry, desperate, helpless Gazans have lined up to receive food at aid sites, only to be shot at by Israeli defense forces. Hundreds have been killed in this manner. Their only crime was begging for food while standing in long queues. As the humanitarian disaster worsens, many rights groups and aid agencies, including some in Israel, are now accusing the Israeli government of carrying out a genocide in Gaza. Many countries, including some of Israel and the United States' closest allies, have declared their intent to recognize a Palestinian state, leaving Netanyahu fuming and Trump slamming them. Listen in to what Israel's former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert told us in this detailed, exclusive conversation. Joining us on Global Pulse tonight is former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Sir, thanks so much for joining me on Global Pulse tonight. We last spoke days after 7th October 2023. And here we are 2.5 years later. So more than 60,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza war. Gazans are starving to death. People are collapsing on the streets. There are malnourished children everywhere. Innocent people stand in queues to collect food and they get shot and killed by Israeli soldiers. The pictures are heartbreaking. Many have called it Israel's starvation strategy. What are your thoughts, sir, on the humanitarian catastrophe that Israel's war in Gaza has created?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be with you again. Slightly less than 2.5 years, almost 2 years. But I am not, I don't share with you the somewhat one-sided description of what's going on. Don't forget that the war started because of the most brutal atrocities perpetrated by Hamas against Israelis, innocent Israeli civilians, in their homes, in their bedrooms, in the living rooms, children and their parents and their grandparents. More than 1,200 people of them were killed and massacred and beheaded and raped in the most brutal manner by Hamas. And this has started this whole tragedy, which was not necessary. Israel was not planning any military operation. It was forced on us as a result of these atrocities. Now, it's true that many people were killed in the military operation of Israel. And amongst those who were killed, there were many thousands of Hamas fighters, but there were also many who were not. Children and people that were not involved in terror, and they became the victims of the inevitable Israeli military operation that was a response for this brutal, barbaric killing of innocent civilians by Hamas. Now, I'm not certain that the description of what happened in the humanitarian centers is accurate, because I think that Hamas was provoking and manipulating in these areas in order to try and get hold of the supplies because Hamas doesn't care for the Palestinians and the suffering of the Palestinians. Hamas is taking care of its own needs. And I'm sure that they are responsible for some of the chaos which took place in the humanitarian needs. However, having said that, I want to make it clear. The fact is that Israel is completely in charge of Gaza, and therefore it is incumbent upon Israel to provide all the humanitarian needs. And if something doesn't work, it's the responsibility of Israel. So while there is not a certain policy of starvation, there is a complete failure as a result of negligence, of indifference, and of inefficiency, which is completely the responsibility of Israel.
I'm glad, sir, you've said that candidly. There are many today, sir, including Israeli human rights agencies, who are saying Netanyahu is committing a genocide and war crimes in Gaza. Do you agree with that?
No, no. I'm the one that said before perhaps most in Israel, but also overseas, that there are war crimes committed. There is no genocide, there is not an attempt to genocide, there is not a policy of genocide, and there hasn't been genocide in Gaza. Okay, let's put things in the right place. I think that for a long time, from the beginning of October 2023, and for a long time until mid 2025, the war was absolutely legitimate and was perceived to be legitimate by the international community. When all the leaders of the West, including President Biden starting, but then Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, subsequently Prime Minister Sturmer, Chancellor Scholz, and subsequently Chancellor Merz, President Macron, of course, and Prime Minister Meloni and others, they all say that Israel has a right to react and to reach out for the Hamas leaders and get rid of all of them and punish them. There was a universal consensus, and everyone knew that in such a military operation against Hamas, which is embedded in the most densely populated areas, there will be a collateral damage of big time, and that many innocent people will be killed as a result of the Israeli operation, which was unavoidable and inevitable and worldly supported. So, let's put things in the right place. Now, since March of 2025, the war lost its legitimacy. The war lost its legitimacy because at that time there was an agreement of between Israel and Hamas, brokered by Qatar and by Egypt and by the United States of America, which was supposed to allow a further release of Israeli hostages and the beginning of what may turn out to be a ceasefire. Now, Israel, unfortunately, did not wait until this whole agreement will be implemented and reduced their military operations. And therefore, the war lost the legitimacy that it entertained for a long time. Once we lost the legitimacy, and even inside the state of Israel, the former former chiefs of staff of the Israeli army, maybe 5 of them, all of the senior generals, all of the senior aircraft, combat air pilots, all of the former commanders of the Mossad and the security services all said that the war has to stop immediately, that there should be no further military operation, that there is not any goal worth the cost of continuing fighting. Under such circumstances, continuing the fighting is a crime. And therefore, what Netanyahu is trying to do is something that can put Israel in a very awkward position because we will not be able to excuse it or to defend it.
I think the situation has become quite indefensible and untenable for Israel. We can all agree on that. So, there are already cases that have been filed against Israel at the International Court of Justice. There are many who are saying Netanyahu should be tried for war crimes and crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court. And I will repeat, sir, People are starving to death in Gaza. What's your view on what people are saying about Netanyahu and his role in all of this?
Okay, while you ask this question, you assume as a premise that I am supposed to accept, which I'm not certain that I can accept, that people are dying from starving. I don't know. We all depend on lots of fake news which are spread by Hamas, and we have to be careful about it. As I said before, there is no question that Israel is responsible for providing all the humanitarian needs, and that this is incumbent upon us, and that there can be no excuse for not doing it. We are in control of Gaza, we have to do it. Okay? Now, there are many events, chaotic events, which are taking place in the humanitarian supplies centers, which are perpetrated by Hamas because of their needs to take hold of some of the supplies for their needs, regardless of what it does to the Palestinians. Hamas proved already that they don't care very much about what happens to the Palestinians. Had they been more aware of this, everything could have been different from the beginning. Now, I want to talk about the International Court of Justice. Look, I think that Netanyahu has to be toppled every minute from his position as prime minister. I think he should be indicted for crimes against Israel, for what he did to polarize the Israeli society, for what he did to break the system of democracy, which has been the pride of the state of Israel for generations. And I'm not, I hear what they say about trying him and indicting him in the International Court of Justice. Quite frankly, I don't think that anyone can prove that Israel under Netanyahu, whom I think we should get rid of, okay? But I don't think that at any time throughout these last 2 years there was an order given by the government of Israel or by the high command of the army to shoot indiscriminately against innocent people or innocent civilians or people that are not involved in terror. So the attempt to prosecute Netanyahu for genocide or for war crimes, I don't think that it will be successful. And the fact is that the court, International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court, both did not yet file any indictment against Netanyahu on these grounds.
Okay, so leaving aside what may or may not happen in the courts, you said we need to get rid of Netanyahu, but there are so many who believe
Politically,
Netanyahu politically, but there are so many who are saying Netanyahu does not want to end the war in Gaza for his own political survival, and that is more important to him than bringing back the remaining Israeli hostages. What's your view on that?
well, as I said, I think this is obnoxious and outrageous and terrible and should certainly help the opposition forces within the state of Israel bring down this government as soon as possible. Riot in the streets as we do already, but with much bigger numbers of Israelis from everywhere, cross country, because this is a totally irresponsible and reckless government. And I hope they will be able to do it. But we don't need and we don't want the assistance of foreign governments in our internal political affairs. We have to do it ourselves, and we should do it.
You have to do it yourselves, except that Netanyahu will have to call an election, and it doesn't look like he's in any mood to do that. But let me ask you this question, sir. At what point and why exactly did you stop supporting this war?
Precisely in what I say to you, because once the war became illegitimate, once it was widely accepted in Israel by all the military people, all the experts, all the former fighters and heroes of Israel, that a continued military operation will not be able to achieve any goal which is west the coast, and we are going to lose the lives of the hostages. And in spite of this, and of course, we are going to lose the lives of soldiers, and there will be many victims amongst the non-involved Palestinians in the where the battleground is. Once the Netanyahu carries on this war, in spite of all of this is an illegitimate war, and I don't support an illegitimate war, and I'm not ready to acquiesce with the loss of lives of Israelis and Palestinians, which
Mhm.
has no basis of reason and responsibility considering the circumstances that we are part of.
So, you said earlier that after the 7th of October, there was a lot of international support for Israel, with world leaders believing that Israel had the right to defend itself against Hamas. But close to 2 years later, would you agree, sir, that Israel stands completely isolated in the world today? The international sentiment is totally against it, given the humanitarian disaster that we are witnessing in Gaza.
I don't know to what extent Israel is violated, but definitely the international community changed its attitude in a very dramatic manner. And I think that the reason for it is largely a result of the failure of the Israeli government to offer political horizon for the day after. Since a very early stage in this military confrontation, many expected the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli cabinet to offer a vision for the future. Okay, you are fighting Hamas, and this is justified, and we all want Hamas to disappear. But what is your vision for the day after Hamas disappears? What is your political plan? Unfortunately, the Israeli Prime Minister and the cabinet were absolutely reluctant to discuss the day after. And as a result, the same military operations which were tolerated and accepted by the international community up to a certain point lost their legitimacy without a political plan for the day after. And that started the erosion in the wide erosion of the international community in the military operations of Israel. And today, of course, 22 months after October 2023, what is being done today has a different resonance in the heart and the minds of people observing it from the outside.
And it's not just people observing it from the outside, sir. As I mentioned earlier, some of Israel's own human rights organizations are now calling Israel's actions in Gaza a genocide. I want to ask you, even if you do not agree with that description or that term, has the mood at home shifted? How do average Israelis feel about what's happening in Gaza?
Well, first of all, the fact that UN or some statements or some politicians across the world call it a genocide doesn't make it a genocide. We are not committing a genocide. What is done there in sometimes is terrible, unacceptable, intolerable, and unforgivable by us. Also, what is done there by Hamas is totally intolerable and unacceptable and unforgivable as well. But this is not genocide, and they are not victims of genocide. We are still, as I said, we need to be able to provide a vision as to what needs done in the future, needs to be done. And if Israel will fail to do it, we will not be able to get the minimal support of the international community. The international community will say, and they already say it, okay, we tolerated the very massive military operation of Israel against Palestinians with the terrible cost of human lives there. But what is your purpose now? What are you after? If Netanyahu is not prepared or is unable or is unwilling to provide a vision for the day after, we are
Mhm.
going to lose more and more of the international support.
No vision for the day after. That's the point well taken, sir. But I want to ask you this specific question. Too many people have died. Children are starving. What will it take for the war in Gaza to end? How can the international community put pressure on Netanyahu to end this war, in your opinion?
I think that the international, when you talk in general terms, the international community, I don't think that the international community is qualified under the political circumstances to exert
Hmm.
this kind of pressure, which will make the change. There is only one person that can do it, and his name is Donald J. Trump from
Yes.
MEGA, from Make America Great Again. He can make America great again if he will call Netanyahu to the Oval Office in Washington, put him on the seat that he loves most, which is in front of the cameras, and then sitting next to him, he will say to him, Netanyahu, enough is enough. This is all over with. We are finished. No more war. He can do it if he wants to do it, and when he decides to do it, I hope he will do it. And I think that Israel needs, unfortunately, when the prime minister is not willing to listen to the word of reason and to the voice of reason coming from within Israel, he may be forced to listen to the voice of reason coming from Trump. And I hope that Trump will do it.
I hope, sir, Trump is listening to you. And even though he stands by Israel and Netanyahu, let me tell you, even President Trump is on record as saying, yes, children and others in Gaza are starving to death. Let me ask you this question, sir. Would you agree that Netanyahu has seriously damaged Israel's image and standing in the world today?
Yes, I think so.
You agree. So,
Yeah.
talking about the future, Netanyahu wants full occupation or conquest of the Gaza Strip, and there is a plan to relocate Gazans into a so called humanitarian city. You have said that would be a concentration camp. Wouldn't such a move amount to ethnic cleansing?
If 600,000 people will be forced to deport from where they live or where they support to live, because most of the houses are broken and destroyed anyway. But if they will be forced away into the what is called a humanitarian camp, it will be interpreted almost automatically as an ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing has not been perpetrated or done by Israel up until now. But if it will force 600,000 people into a camp, closed, segregated camp, then the unavoidable interpretation will be that this is ethnic cleansing. But it hasn't happened yet.
And let's certainly hope it doesn't come to that. Sir, talking about the international community, the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Australia, these are amongst Israel and the United States' closest allies. They've all said they will recognize a Palestinian state. Netanyahu says it's a reward for Hamas terrorists. So you are a strong proponent of the two-state solution. Correct me if I'm
Right.
wrong. Can there be any lasting solution other than the two-state solution? Something
No,
that Netanyahu just cannot see?
no, he doesn't want to see. If he doesn't want to see, he can't see. But there is not any alternative solution to a two-state solution. There are many ideas, there are many plans, there are many, all kinds of initiatives. There are one state for two people, autonomy of some sort, and so on and so forth. All this is just an attempt to avoid facing the problem with all its gravity and with all the depths of its emotional impact. There has to be such an arrangement on the two state. This is what I've proposed to the Palestinian leader in 2008 and 2009. It will be a very difficult solution to implement, but ultimately, this is the only way to put things, to change course into a direction which will create the necessary reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians, which is essential for the atmosphere of peace between the two people.
So, moderate and reasonable leaders like yourself believe that the two state solution is the only lasting solution. But do you fear that Netanyahu's approach is radicalizing people on both sides, making future coexistence nearly impossible?
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I will do everything in my power to try and create a different momentum in the Israeli public opinion in direct opposition to what Netanyahu is doing. Because I think that what he is doing and what he is advocating is leading Israel into a very terrible crisis. And as you already outlined, using the international support, the friends that we have been friendly with for generations. So these policies are totally unacceptable, and we'll have to fight it politically within the state of Israel.
And I hope you do, sir. So many people around the world hope you do. You know, you talked about the important role that Donald Trump can play in this. Let me ask you this question. The US, sir, continues to supply weapons to Israel, even as it criticizes other countries for fueling the Ukraine war. Some would argue, are Trump and the United States also not complicit in the Gaza tragedy? How do you look at it?
I don't know. We don't know everything. I wish I could be as certain as some people that criticize Israel or, criticize America are so certain about. I'm not sure. I just say one thing, and this is the real bottom line, of this discussion. Look, how do you know I'm here in Tel Aviv, you're in India, in some place? There are people that say this is what happened in the humanitarian need. Israelis were shooting. Some Israelis say, no, we were not shooting. The Hamas was shooting. They are shooting. We are shooting. There is chaos. The Americans are not capable of organizing necessary arrangements. The Egyptians are not always very effective, although which we would have loved them to be. There is one thing, simple thing. I feel that Israel can't eat the cake and have it. If we are in charge of Gaza as we are, then we have to be able to provide all the necessary logistical arrangements for the provision of food for 2.5 million people living there, period. And if it doesn't happen, it's our failure. Is Hamas part of this failure? Yes. Are others part of this failure? Yes. But this is ultimately our responsibility.
I am very, very reassured, sir, to hear you make that candid and very important admission. Sir, Netanyahu is getting a lot of flack for the devastation and starvation in Gaza. But let me ask you a different question. 7th October happened on Netanyahu's watch. Many say he was too arrogant and complacent to see it coming. Should the people of Israel hold Netanyahu responsible for the 7th October attacks?
Netanyahu is responsible. There is no question about it. He was the father of this concept, which ignored the chances for negotiations with the Palestinian Authority, and he flirted with Hamas, hoping that he can buy with money some kind of cooperation, which failed completely. And therefore, I say that we need to topple him. We need to have as soon as possible elections in Israel, and I hope that in these elections he will lose in a very dramatic and significant manner, so that there will not be any more a Likud government in Israel.
But, sir, how soon can you actually hope to have an election in Israel? Will Netanyahu not have to call it? And he will keep claiming that till the time this war is on, there cannot be an election.
First of all, in the history of Israel, we had elections in the 31st of December 1973, while most of the Israeli people, most of the Israeli army was still in reserve service as a result of the war between Israel and Egypt at that time. So we have an experience of running elections even at a time of this kind of war. And I think this is an excuse, but this is not a real reason not to have elections. And the elections will take place at the latest in October 2026. I hope it will take place earlier, hopefully sometimes in the beginning of 2026.
October 2026 does seem like it's very far away. So, last couple of questions before I let you go. The US and Israel recently struck Iran's nuclear facilities, calling its program a threat to the world and an existential danger to Israel. In your view, sir, was this military action justified, or did it risk igniting a wider regional war that could have ultimately endangered Israel itself?
First of all, not Israel and America attacked the nuclear sites. Only America did it. Israel did other things which were very well justified. Look, Iran is another country which is consistently, for now years and years, generations, is threatening the annihilation of the state of Israel. It's not Israel that attacked the atomic sites in Iran. This was America. And one can't ignore the fact that Iran was threatening Israel for a long time to annihilate Israel. They were shooting ballistic missiles into the state of Israel, and there was a genuine danger that if they will allow to continue the nuclear program, they may use it in order to further their threats.
All right, sir, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing with our viewers your perspective on what is clearly a very grave situation in Gaza. It's a worsening humanitarian crisis. Everyone wants to see an end to it, and everyone wants to see an end to this devastating war at the earliest. Thank you very much, Ehud Olmert, former Prime Minister of Israel, for speaking to us on Global Pulse.